It's time for Brunch with Bernie, our weekly chat and national town hall meeting, really, with the senator from Vermont, Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, welcome.
Great to be with you, Tom.
Great to have you with us. What's on your plate?
Well, it has been a busy week in many respects. I am the ranking member, which is kind of the leader of the opposition, leader of the Democrats, on the Budget Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And this week we voted on a Republican budget, which won, I believe, 51 to 49. And, Tom, this budget is so bad that when I talk about it, people really don't believe me. But it is a budget which so clearly represents the interest of the billionaire class and so clearly represents an attack on working families and the middle class that it is almost beyond comprehension that a major political party could bring it forth. And what I found very disturbing in terms of this whole process, and this is something we've been working on for months, is how little attention this disastrous budget is paid by the media. But let me just briefly go over what this budget does. For a start, just in a rather cavalier manner, it throws 27 million people off of health insurance. How's that?
Whoa.
Nothing
this
serious,
is the Republican budget.
People off health insurance by ending the Affordable Care Act, so-called Obamacare, and by cutting Medicaid by well over $400 billion. When you end the Affordable Care Act, you're throwing 16 million people off of health insurance, many of whom for the first time have had health insurance, and then you're throwing another 11 off by making massive cuts in Medicaid. When I asked the Republicans what happens to these 27 million people, how many of them die, how many of them become much sicker than they otherwise would, how many of them end up in an emergency room at great cost to the healthcare system, they have no answer. None. That's it. 27 million. We're the only country, on the only major country, that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right, and they throw 27 million people off of health care on top of the 35 million we already have who are uninsured. And that's it. Now, what do you think?
It's astonishing. This is the Republican budget. Why is it that the media doesn't talk about this?
I'll tell you why. It's a very interesting. There are two reasons why. The budget is not an appropriations bill. The budget is a framework. And the framework will then go to the budget, will go to the Appropriations Committee where real legislation will be developed. And if legislation is very bad, I think it's fair to say that Barack Obama will, in fact, veto legislation which repeals Obamacare. Fair guess, right?
Sure.
All right. So what they're saying, well, this isn't really real. It's not going to be 100% applicable because this is just the framework. And that's true. But on the other hand, this is the framework. This is what the Republican Party, the party that controls the House and the Senate, actually believes. I think we should talk about it. Then, not only that, every listener knows that it is becoming increasingly difficult for young people and families to send kids to college. And many of our young people leave college with deep debts. The Republican solution is to cut $90 billion over a 10-year period in mandatory funding for Pell Grants, Pell Grants being the major source of grants provided by the federal government. Millions of working families will find it harder to send their kids to college as a result. So the solution to the crisis of college affordability, make massive cuts in Pell Grant programs. In terms of nutrition, it is no secret that we have today some 45 million Americans living in poverty, and a number of them are really struggling every single day to figure out how they're going to put food on the table for their kids. Half the kids in our public schools, I believe, are on free or reduced lunch programs. So nutrition is a big issue in this country. And yet what the Republicans did is make massive, massive cuts in food stamp program and the women, infant, and child program. This is a program that provides nutrition for low-income pregnant women and their babies, cut. The Meals on Wheels program, cut for elderly, fragile seniors. I mean, unbelievably cruel. And then on top of cutting health care, education, and nutrition, what the Republicans also do is they decide that one of the great tax problems in our country is that at a time when we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality, what they believe is that the top 0.2%, not 1%, top 0.2% of 1% of the richest families in America deserve over a 10-year period a $269 billion break in their taxes. Got that? That's by repealing the estate tax. The estate tax only applies to the top 0.2 of 1%. They repeal it. $269 billion goes to the wealthiest 5,500 families in America. That's it. Now, to add insult to injury, what they also do, after giving huge tax breaks to billionaire families, they then come back and say, we are going to allow to expire the increased benefits we put into the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit for low-income and working families. Those increased benefits will expire, meaning lower income and working families will pay more in taxes. So, if you were to sit down and write a budget that reflects the greed of the billionaire class, more tax breaks for billionaires, savage cuts to virtually every program that working families need, this is the budget that you would write. Mm-hmm. And I think, if the American people knew what was in this budget, knew what the Republicans stood for, I honestly believe they would have a hard time getting 15-20% of the vote. But that was the reality. So that's one issue that we have been working on really hard. And what I will be doing, along with a number of other progressive senators, is to make sure that these ideas are not translated into legislation. And to the degree that they are, we've got to make sure that the president vetoes that legislation.